Today's lesson is on how to cook homemade chicken noodle soup. This is how you make it. First of all, you need 2 of these large cans of chicken broth. 49.5 ounce cans of chicken broth, you need 2 of those. You also need a large pan, such as this stainless steel pan, and you need a skillet. And then you also need 2 cans of veg-all or mixed vegetables. This is the top brand of mixed vegetables. That's what you want. Chicken broth, it don't matter what kind you get. You can get your homemade store brand like this one. You also need some black pepper, and you need a little bit of garlic powder and a little bit of onion powder. Doesn't matter what brands they are, it's your preference. Can be your generic brands, that's fine. And you also need water as well. Okay, you want to dump both your cans of your chicken broth in your large pan. You also want to fill this thing up with water, hot water. Okay, you can dump your full container of hot water in there. Oh, by the way, we're not responsible for your injuries, burns, or any of that stuff. That's on you. Do this at your own risk. You assume the responsibility. You want to open your cans of whatever you got to put in there. You can dump that in with your 2 cans of broth and your 1 can of water. We're also not responsible for any injuries to anybody that you share this video or recipe with. Okay, now you want to turn the burner on. Maybe that next line below high for now, so you can get this warmed up fairly fast. You want to take your garlic powder and just dump, well, I don't know, just a little bit in there. Ain't going to be a whole lot, just a few light sprinkles. Onion powder, you can take and kind of put several heavy shakes in there. You ain't going to pull no measure and stuff out, you know. This is the way rednecks cook. We don't use measuring stuff, we just, except for the pepper, we use a regular spoon, just a small regular spoon. You want to get in here and you want to get about, I would say, 3/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. And you want to sprinkle that in there. That gives a very good flavor. Very good for fighting against colds too. Then you want to take all your spices and everything and put them away. That way your spouse doesn't get pissed off at you. Because we don't leave messes for other people to clean up. We clean up after ourselves. Okay, another ingredient you need is oh, I don't know what this is. Yeah, 1 pound. 1 pound of wide egg noodles. Can be any kind, but there's these certain ones that really swell up really good. Like this here, oh, how do you pronounce it? Alberti's or Alberto's wide egg noodles. Something similar to this. You want 1 pound of egg noodles. Once your broth and everything starts heating up and comes to like where it's just a light boil, you can dump all your egg noodles in there, stir it up good. You want to use a ladle to stir your soup up. And once again, we're not responsible for any misconduct you do to yourself or others while you make this. This is a use at your own risk recipe. Okay, next thing you want to do is you want to get, oh, it don't matter how much, maybe a pound or so of chicken tenders. It's breast meat, I believe, or something similar to it. It's white chicken meat. This cut in smaller portions than the breast pieces. Get you about a pound of that. You can add more if you want to. You could add a couple pounds of it if you want to. And you also want to get some canola oil. Canola oil you want to dump in your pan. You don't need a whole heck of a lot, just enough to coat the bottom of the skillet fairly decently. It don't really matter, it's up to you how much you want to use of the canola oil. You can also use vegetable oil. Vegetable oil tastes good, but it's not really good for you. Canola oil doesn't hurt you, it doesn't help you. If you're really a health fanatic, you can use olive oil. However, chicken just don't seem to taste quite right in olive oil, but I mean, you can use it if you're really a health freak. You want to put all your tenders. First of all, you should have washed your hands before you started this, unless you're not worried about diseases or whatever. That's your call. We're not responsible for any diseases, salmonella, or anything else. You eat foods such as chicken at your own risk, because, you know, from what I've seen on TV, chicken in the U.S. is pretty contaminated with salmonella and everything else. So you do want to make sure you thoroughly cook your chicken all the way through. I'm not sure what the temperature is. They say 165 or something like that all the way through. But chicken tenders are pretty thin, so they cook pretty fast. You want to turn your burner on. Make sure you put the right one on. You're responsible if you goof it up. And we're not responsible for stoves that arc out or any of that stuff. In fact, you accept all responsibility for anything seen or unseen. Turn your burner on to the very next notch that's above medium to cook your chicken on. And you want to go ahead and let it start heating up and cooking. See, that's what it will look like in your skillet. You had your canola oil down there, and your burner should be up to just past the halfway mark. That's where medium is on my stove. We're using a Whirlpool stove, and you notice that your broth in your pan here, it is starting to get warmed up there. Not quite ready to put the noodles in. See, this is the noodles here that we're using. I don't know if you can find this name brand at your store, but it's pretty good. These ones here swell up pretty big in the pan, and I believe you'd like this. You can use any kind of egg noodles, it don't matter. You can use the cheap ones, but these ones here are to brag on. They swell up pretty good, like the noodles that Grandma used to, you know, she would pull her rolling pin out and all that stuff and roll it out, and make her dough, roll it out, and cut it up with a knife and all that stuff. That's kind of what these taste like. It's the old-fashioned homemade egg noodle type noodles. They swell up pretty good and taste pretty good. And chicken's kind of getting kind of slow to heat up here. But what you want to do with the chicken is just keep flipping it over, and it'll start turning white as you cook it. Once it gets fairly white on both sides, you want to take a spatula and cut the chicken tenders into smaller pieces. Or, you know, if you're afraid you're going to burn your chicken, which is possible, you know, shut your burner off for a while and take your chicken tenders after they look fairly white on a cutting board, and you can cut them up with a knife. Careful not to burn yourself. You accept all responsibility for burns to yourself and others, or any other incidents that are seen or unseen, real or imaginary. It's all on you. You see the thing's starting to bubble now, so that means that's a good sign. You want to keep flipping these over quite often because they can burn real easy. Now, I like to use a spatula and a fork to flip these over. It's a lot easier to do it that way. You'll end up with a lot less messes if you can do it that way. Caution, the oil, canola oil or whatever type of oil you use when you turn your burner on becomes hot. So you want to make sure you don't splash any water or your chicken broth or any of that in the hot oils, because bad things can happen. You assume all responsibility for any crazy things you might do. Crazy or not crazy. Flip those over, keep flipping them over until it looks fairly white, and then you need to find some way to break the chicken tenders down into smaller pieces without burning yourself. See, as this is cooking, pretty good there. Starts to turn white as you cook it. Your actual soup here, it's starting to get warm, but it's not quite ready to put in your stuff in there. Now, one thing you can do, which I think I forgot to do, if you want to, you can chop one onion, preferably white, yellow, sweet, Vidalia, something like that. And you could have cooked it in there with your chicken. Alright, you want to turn your burner down because that's getting too hot here. Turn it down maybe just a hair below medium, because this thing here, I don't know if you can see it, it's really starting to get violent in there, and we need to slow that down a little bit. Oh, by the way, hot oils like to splash up. If it's splashing up too much, turn your burner down a little bit more so that don't happen. You're responsible for all injuries to yourself and others. We're going to turn this burner down to about the 5 or 7 o'clock position. It's just starting to splash too much. Need to slow it down. We might even have to take it lower because it's getting kind of violent. Yep, in fact, it's getting way too violent. We're going to shut it off And we're going to do just what we said. Take your chicken out and cut it up in smaller pieces. Okay, we got the burner off, and we're going to take our chicken out carefully. Let the skillet cool down because it's just getting nuts. You can also cut these up on a plate as long as you're not worried about goofing the plate up. Use a sharp knife. Don't cut yourself or stab anybody. Don't stab yourself. You assume all responsibility for that. Okay, these are not quite all the way done, but we took them out for now, and what we want to do is we want to cut the chicken in smaller pieces like what you would see in a soup, like chicken noodle soup, which is what we're trying to bring together. Now, if you have people in your family that might get mad because you have scratched your plate up with a knife and a fork, you might want to use a cutting board or something else. Be careful not to burn yourself. The stuff is hot. You assume all responsibility for all those things. By the way, this really good chicken noodle soup is very good if you have a cold or if you're sick or something like that. Okay, now we've got this all cut up into little pieces. We can carefully put it back in the skillet without splashing yourself. Okay, we put all of our chicken back here in the skillet. We want to turn it back on medium or so. Make sure you stir it real good, and we'll cook it for, oh, I don't know, maybe approximately 5 minutes or so. Your water and broth got heated up pretty good. It had started boiling. I had to turn it down to about the 5 o'clock position or so. Go ahead and dump your noodles in your soup. You want to make sure it was just like at least a slow boil before you put those in. And you want to stir it up without hurting yourself. You assume responsibility. Hand cleanliness is a must when you're handling raw meats such as chicken. Make sure you wash your hands well. Not responsible for any transmitted diseases. Not responsible for anything. You assume all responsibility. Only do this if you assume your own responsibility, because I'm not responsible for you. You're dealing with hot stuff, including hot waters and all that stuff. You assume responsibility for not thinking things through and doing things in ways that injures you or others. Not responsible for people that drown. Not responsible for all that. You assume all responsibility. Okay, you want to make sure you keep stirring your chicken. You'll still see some pink pieces in there. You want to make sure you keep stirring them. You know, if you see some that look obviously pink, you want to make sure you get the pink side down. That way you know it's cooking where it needs it. Always beware that things can splash out and burn you. So always be ready to jump or whatever. We're not responsible for any injuries you incur doing maneuvers as you cook this. You assume all responsibility. You want to keep it while you're going here, and just every once in a while stir your soup up here. When the chicken gets done, and it's not done yet, you want to carefully use a spatula and put it in here. Be careful, this is all hot and could splash and you could be injured. You assume all responsibility for injuries to yourself and others. It always helps. Maybe you should say a prayer. If you're the type that injures yourself and others, you may want to say a prayer and ask the Lord to help you to do this without any injuries to yourself or others. Probably a good idea. Now, I like to cook it until you just start seeing just a little bit of browning on the chicken. I mean, some people can cook it where it's still white, but I want to make sure it's done, especially when the statistics are saying that at least 1/4, 25% or more of American, or the chicken that is being sold in stores in America is contaminated with salmonella or some other type of disease. So you want to make sure it definitely gets cooked all the way. If you can get your chicken to all get to that 165 degrees or whatever it is, they say that will kill all diseases inside the chicken. It'll be safe to eat at that time. Now, if your soup starts boiling too much or just looks like it's going berserk, bubbling or something, you can turn it down. You can turn this all the way down to about the 8 o'clock position, maybe even slightly below that depending on the way your stove works. Right now we still have it in about the 5 or 5:30 position. Keep like just a little bit of a boil going to it so your noodles are cooking. Now if you want to, you can take a little bit more of the onion powder. Maybe dump a little bit or a lot more, depends on how you like it. Dump a lot more onion powder in there. That'll add some extra flavor. See how this is looking like it's fairly done. A little bit, just a hair, a little bit brown on there. You got your soup that's cooking away here. Watch you don't burn yourself. Okay, we're thinking our chicken's pretty close to being done here. You just want the chicken to be white all the way through. That's the goal. Make sure it's done all the way in there. If you feel skeptical, cook it just a little bit longer, but be careful, because if you cook it to where it's too brown, it's going to become hard. Not that it really matter in a soup, because it might soften up in there. We think our chicken's done, so we're going to call her done. We're going to carefully dump it into our soup. You don't want to just dump this hot oil into your broth, because who knows what could happen. Some kind of volcanic eruption or something like that. I'm not sure, but do not try it. Could be dangerous. You assume all responsibility. Okay, now you want to stir your soup up that now has the chicken in here. And you can let it simmer here. We still have it on the about the 5 o'clock position, maybe 5:30 position, which is just slightly over medium. Your chicken's in there and everything, it's all going good. Your noodles are starting to fatten up in there. Now what you're waiting on now is just for the noodles to taste to your liking. Some people like their noodles a little tender. That's the way I like it. If you cook it too long, it becomes kind of mushy and nasty. I don't like that. Actually, if you get it to a certain point and go a little bit further, that's the way some people like it. But I've learned that kind of a little bit tender noodles taste better in my mind. That's the way I like it. So use your own judgment on that. If you see it boiling too much like this, we're going to turn it down now to about the 7 o'clock position. And if that don't slow it enough, You know, maybe about the 8 o'clock position or slightly below that should work. Just let it simmer. In fact, we're gonna go ahead and put it at the 8 o'clock position. That's good enough for now. We can just let it simmer. Every once in a while, carefully take out a few noodles on a small plate or something and make sure you cool it and don't burn yourself, and taste the noodles. You know, maybe a couple noodles and taste it to see if it, you know, tastes to your likings. Once you get it done, you can just turn the burner clear off and serve your soup. Make sure you say your prayers. And that's my secret recipe to how to make homemade chicken noodle soup. We hope it was a blessing for you. God bless you, and thank you for watching.